Two Canadian law societies have decided to ban Christian-schooled lawyers from practicing law in their provinces. The Law Society of Upper Canada voted 28 to 21 to ban them. And just last week, the Nova Scotia Barristers Society voted 10 to 9 to effectively blacklist Christians from that province too. The ban applies in advance to any and every lawyer who graduates from a law school at BC's Trinity Western University. Trinity Western has been around for more than 60 years. It's a fine university, smaller than U of T or McGill, but it's just as accredited, and it has a fine reputation. It's recently launched a law school, and that has been accredited too, of course. But the law societies of Ontario and Nova Scotia have decided in advance to ban any lawyer who graduates from there without even meeting those lawyers, without any cause or quarrel with them, without any complaint about them. They are prejudging every single lawyer who graduates from there, whether they're Christian or Jewish or atheist or straight or gay, without an accusation, without a hearing, without a chance to speak for themselves. Those young lawyers will be told they are not welcome, all because they hold a certain belief and made a certain moral promise about their own conduct. See, Trinity Western is a Christian school, and they have a code of conduct that follows general Christian principles, just like every Catholic school in this country has too. I mean, that's enshrined in our Constitution, by the way. It's not just about religious freedom. It was about bringing peace between French Catholics and English Protestants hundreds of years ago. Canada is built on accommodating Christian beliefs, and it still works that way today. Trinity Western isn't open only to Christians, of course, just like Catholic high schools aren't only open to Catholics, but Trinity Western does ask that all students of all stripes, Christian, Jewish, atheist, straight, gay, whatever, not engage in sex outside of a traditional marriage. So if you're a student who sees university as a big booze and sex party, choose another university. There are plenty of universities in Canada willing to compete for the jocks and the partiers. Trinity Western is for those students who want to choose a different lifestyle. Trinity Western students are asked to make a promise. It's called a covenant to live a modest life. Here, let me quote to you from the key sentence in the student handbook. Observe modesty, purity, and appropriate intimacy in all relationships. Reserve sexual expressions of intimacy for marriage. And within marriage, take every reasonable step to resolve conflict and avoid divorce. Like most Christians, Trinity Western also believes that marriage is between a woman and a man. Again, if you don't want to make that promise, go to another school. Trinity Western school culture is not for everyone. It's not for students who like to go to party schools, who like to go to spring break bacchanalias where they drink to excess and indulge in the hookup culture, banging everything that moves. It's for Christians. It's the one Christian school in the country. You wouldn't go there if you thought a college was a big piss-up or just gets more notches on your bedpost, or if you want to score some weed. You'd probably just go down the highway to UBC or a dozen other schools where the university administration would probably help you, or they'd probably have a crack pipe vending machine like they do in Vancouver. But notice two things. First of all, this Trinity Western promise is a personal promise. It's a covenant that students willingly make. It's not imposed on them. It's what students impose on themselves. And notice something else. It doesn't mention religion or sexual orientation, straight or gay, Jewish or Gentile. It applies to everyone. But these Law Society benchers, in an extreme expression of political correctness, actually claim this is anti-gay bigotry. They actually say that discriminating against all of these future Christian school lawyers is the just and legal remedy for their imaginary detection of anti-gay discrimination. But this belief in a moral code, that's all a covenant is, students saying they promise to live their own lives this way, it's a promise of self-discipline. But that's enough for these law societies to say in advance that no graduate from these schools is ethically allowed to practice law in Ontario or Nova Scotia. Think of how diabolical that is. If you were a sex fiend, if you were an alcoholic, if you have no personal moral code, you are welcome to be a lawyer in Ontario or Nova Scotia until someone accuses you of misconduct and you are tried and have a chance to meet the charges and are found to be disreputable. You are given the presumption of innocence, but if you have a very basic traditional moral code that discriminates not against any religion or orientation, but rather applies to general modesty, then these law societies say in advance, without meeting you, that you may not be a lawyer. You may not join their little club. You may not even earn a living as a lawyer. And you sure as hell aren't going to become a judge. It's pure anti-Christian bigotry. They're not even pretending. They want to keep the Christians out. You know, just last month, Quebec's Charter of Secular Values was rebuked in their provincial election. It was called discrimination. But it only applied to people wearing ostentatious religious garb in government jobs. And all the liberals in the country said it was an outrageous infringement on freedom. And yet, mere weeks later, we have a total ban, not just in government jobs, but in private practice, of any Christian lawyer from Trinity Western, not for anything they do or say outwardly, but for simply having made a personal and private decision to live their life in a Christian way while being a student. I mean, the law societies are not even pretending to be fair. Many other lawyers from other different faiths share a similar sexual view. Orthodox Jews, devout Catholics, Muslims, they're not being targeted, but only Trinity Western is. It's the modern equivalent of a "No Blacks Allowed" sign on a restaurant in the 1960s in the Deep South. There's no doubt that these secretive law societies are breaking the law. I mean, when anti-Christian bigots at the BC Teachers College tried to do the same thing years ago to ban teachers who graduated from Trinity Western, the Supreme Court of Canada smacked them down in an 8-1 ruling saying anti-Christian discrimination is unacceptable in a modern society. Apparently, these Law Society bigots think they're above the law. There's something deeply wrong when the Law Society benchers, who are senior lawyers, people who are supposed to be the guardians of our civil rights, are the ones destroying our civil rights. Freedom of religion is so important, our Constitution even calls it a fundamental freedom. The Law Societies in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, PEI, Newfoundland, and Nunavut know this. They voted to approve graduates from Trinity Western. Not every Law Society is as bigoted as the ones in Ontario and Nova Scotia. What's so gross here is that these same Law Societies actually used to be this bigoted about 100 years ago. It's 2014 and they're banning Christians now, but back in 1914, it was mainly Jews they banned. See, a whole bunch of Jews had immigrated to Canada in the early 1900s, and some of them started applying to law school and medical school, and these Jews were smart and they started taking up too much room. So the great universities of the day, like McGill, brought in racial quotas. They gave them a fancy legal name in Latin, numerous clauses. They limited the number of Jews allowed. And even those Jews, once they graduated, were limited. Many law firms wouldn't hire them, so the Jews started their own firms, of course. Many hospitals wouldn't hire Jewish doctors, which is why across North America, so many cities have amazing hospitals called Mount Sinai hospitals, often the best hospitals in town. They were started by Jews who were kept out of the professions and out of hospitals by the bigots of 100 years ago. Well, the Jews finally broke down those barriers, and Muslims and Hindus and others too. In fact, just look at the law societies now. They are packed with Jews. Seriously, scroll through the names in the Law Society of Upper Canada benchers. Just scroll down the names. It's practically half Jewish, even though Jews represent only 200,000 people in Ontario out of a population of 13.5 million. The persecuted have become the persecuted. Here, take a look at this roll call vote for a second.
Ms. Dixon?
No.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Earnshaw?
No.
And they went through all the benchers. Let me tell you some of the Jewish benchers, like Howard Goldblatt and Michael Lerner and Jack Rabinovich and Linda Rothstein and Kathleen Strasberg. Those are Jewish benchers who actually voted to ban lawyers from Trinity Western, just like Christian benchers 100 years ago voted to ban Jews. And the bencher leading the charge against Trinity Western is Clayton Ruby, a Jewish lawyer too, who actually has the temerity to call himself a human rights lawyer. What a disgrace. So let's get this straight. A law society that used to be full of Christians keeping out the Jews is now a spectacle of benchers, including Jewish benchers, keeping out the Christians. How classy is that? But hey, it's the one bigotry you can still get away with in Canada. Let me show you the epitome of this. A gay Jewish law student named Adam Goldenberg, elite of the elites. He's a student at Yale. He's Michael Ignatieff's former speechwriter. He's gay and proud and out of the closet and out loud. I mean, good for him. And it's been that way his whole life. He's just in his 20s. I mean, gay marriage has been legal in Canada since he was a teenager. I mean, life really couldn't be any easier or better for a gay man in the world, in the whole history of the world, than it is in Canada in 2014. But the rage and the fury with which he treats this small Christian university is quite shocking. Here he is on the CBC, naturally, calling for the blacklisting of Christian lawyers from Trinity Western. The CBC would never allow a racist calling for the banning of Jews or a KKK Grand Dragon calling for the banning of blacks. But here, take a listen.
And I think that those decisions would be right. It would be right to say that this law school should not exist. Because first of all, let's dismiss with the notion that you cannot, that you can somehow ban gay sex without banning gay students. It's a sexual orientation. Sex is kind of the point. And the purpose of this community covenant is to make sure that gay students are not welcome at this law school. And there is a place for law societies, as the keeper of the public interest in the legal profession, to say you cannot operate a law school in this country that discriminate against gays. And the bigger problem here is that we wouldn't even be having this conversation with these protests and these, trumped up claims about religious freedom if someone were saying, oh, I get to discriminate against black people or Jews on the basis of my religious beliefs. There is a double standard here. Trinity Western is exploiting it.
So he says this law school should not even be allowed to exist. Stop to think about that. Here is someone who wants to literally use the power of the state, that's the power the benchers have, to forbid Christians from having a law school. I'm sorry, that is a depth of fascism I haven't seen in Canada in recent years. Imagine if someone were to say that Jews shouldn't be allowed to have schools, or Muslims. Goldenberg just said that about Trinity Western, and he said Trinity Western is anti-gay. Now, I searched the entire student handbook. Sure, the covenant asks students to commit to traditional Christian values, such as marriage between a man and a woman and abstaining from extramarital sex. But the words gay or sexual orientation are not even in there. And the covenant for modest living, I read it to you, it applies to everyone. But did you catch that one part where he says that having sex is the whole point of being gay in his mind? That's the whole sexual orientation thing. And that's what really makes him mad. That ban on extramarital sex, that other people in Canada would actually choose to control their own sexual appetites. He thinks you shouldn't be allowed to have the kind of school where people promise to do that. He said that on TV. One more clip from this little fascist.
Look, the Supreme Court, the law says that you have a right to religious belief, but there's no religion in the world that says you're not allowed to go to school with gay people. That is not a religious belief. It's an expression of religious belief that uses discrimination as a false pretext for religious expression. I think it's bogus.
I say again, Trinity Western does not discriminate against Jews or blacks or gays. They don't discriminate against anyone. They just don't. I've read their handbook, but they believe in a modest approach to sexuality, not Adam Goldenberg's hypersexuality where everything is about sex, and that's fine. I mean, free country. You can make your politics about sex if you want to, but Goldenberg doesn't just want to disagree with Trinity Western students. He wants to ban them from working or becoming lawyers or having the right to even have a school. Who are the real bigots here? It's so weird. For centuries, the Jews were bullied. For centuries, gays were bullied. And now in Canada, they're not. Most Jews and gays are enjoying freedom, being equal with everybody else, but not the Jews of the Law Society of Upper Canada. They're getting a bit of vengeance, aren't they? Same with gay fascists like Adam Goldenberg. It's not enough for them to have equality. They demand submission by you. No more than that, they demand silence. They demand that Christian-schooled lawyers be banned from the public square, be banned from court, be banned from even writing wills or doing contract law. That is fascism. Done in the name of the law? That's a perversion of the law. As a Jew, I'm embarrassed. As a Canadian, I'm furious. I want you to sign a petition. I set up a website this morning called therealbigots.com. If you want to go there and sign my petition, I'm going to send the names on the petition to two places. I'm going to send the petition to the law societies that have yet to rule on Trinity Western. The petition reminds those law societies about freedom of religion and Canada's pluralistic nature. And I'm going to send it to the bigots at the Law Society of Upper Canada and in Nova Scotia, demanding that they rescind their anti-Christian apartheid, that they undo their perverse Quebec-style charter of values that goes much further than anything contemplated by Quebec. I want you to go there now, therealbigots.com. This is an important fight, and one we will continue fighting until all of us, Christian and Jewish, gay and straight, are all equal before the law, no matter what the leftist fascists of Canada's legal elites have to say.